The sanctity of human life is under assault. Find out how and what you can do about it in this edition of Life Matters with Brian Johnston, Western Regional Director of the National Right to Life Committee. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your radio program and podcast on the right to life, on what it really is. And you know, it's a very essential and almost primordial idea that every human life is significant. It's so important it was put in America's founding documents, that we hold this to be a self-evident truth, that your life and every life is a divine gift, a gift from our Creator, and that the government didn't give you your right to be alive. It isn't by the government's permission that you go about your life or that you live. Nevertheless, the government still has a duty, and that's to protect your life. And if a government does not do its job in ensuring these rights, that is to say, the self-evident truths, the God-given right to life being the first one, if a government doesn't protect innocent life, it's not a just government, because it's for this reason that governments are instituted among men. Our founders said that human life is significant, and that government governs human life, but governments have a duty. So the right to life is an important premise for our government system. It's been forgotten. People tend to get confused about what the right to life is about. We have this program, Life Matters, to clarify what this is about, and especially because of the hurly-burly of our culture and the battles of ideas that are going on daily in our culture, clarity is needed. And we're going to spend time today clarifying a very recent event, the recall election of Gavin Newsom in California. And we're going to go through this. I want to remind you that all along, when this recall first qualified, I mentioned to you how it was nearly miraculous. It was incredible because it's very difficult to qualify anything for the ballot in California unless you're a billionaire. Putting signatures out and getting qualified voters to sign a ballot initiative is very difficult. Because of the COVID controversy, a justice of the court extended the deadline, and that allowed enough time to qualify this recall. We're going to spend some time first talking about why it was significant, why it was a good thing, why it's important to realize that going into political battle, that is, battle over policies, that's what political battle is. Going into political battle is just as important as any other battle in history. It's very significant. And as Churchill said, that politics is a lot like war, and you do risk dying. But the problem in politics is that you can die many times, but in war, you'll only die once. So he understood why policy is important and the parallel with war, physical war. And we've talked about that before. I could go on and on, but it's important for you to realize that policies matter. If you care about the abortion issue, if you care about innocent babies, that's a good thing. But you need to know the reason they're being killed is because not only it's legal, but in California, it's promoted and it's paid for. And you're told to shut up about it and to pay for it. That's a battle. And that is a political issue. That's a policy issue. So we do get into policies here at California Pro-Life Council. California Pro-Life is the sponsor of Life Matters. We're heard outside of California, but these issues apply everywhere in the world, because this is an issue everywhere in the world, the killing of human babies, and whether or not that government approves of it. This is happening everywhere in our culture, and those who care about human life, those who care about just laws, know that that's an unjust thing to do, to throw human babies in the trash. It's the wrong answer. So back to Gavin Newsom and what happened in this recent election. I want to remind you again why we were committed. Because of policies, Gavin Newsom is the single greatest death advocate executive in the nation. That's right. He's the chief executive of our state, as every governor is, and as the president is of the United States of America. But Gavin Newsom is the single greatest death advocate our nation has ever seen. That may seem like an overstatement when you realize not only does he support abortion on demand, but there's no residency requirement for paying for those abortions. He has invited women across the nation to come to California, and the California taxpayers will pay for their abortions. By the way, you know that there is no limit on the age of the child. There need not be anything physically wrong with the mother or the child. This isn't for hard cases. This is for choice. Well, we just choose to get rid of this child for any number of social reasons, or as Justice Byron White wisely said, for any number of social reasons or for no reason in particular. That is what is meant by choice abortion. Gavin Newsom not only endorses that, but encourages others to come to California. California has on its books a Born Alive Infant Protection Act, that if in the course of an abortion, the child is born alive, and in late-term abortions, that can happen. It has happened. The state of California says you need to treat that child like a child that's just been born alive. Gavin Newsom's administration refuses to enforce that existing law, Born Alive Child Protection Act. This is a complete dismissal of vulnerable human lives. But Newsom goes well beyond that. You know already that vulnerable people, if they have an illness, if they're elderly, it has been suggested that they get out of the way. And that if they're depressed and want to just get it over with, in California, it's now legal to engage in assisted suicide. Assisted suicide is when there's a third party. It's not really a true suicide because suicide means that person does it alone to themselves. An assisted suicide means you're inviting an assistant, an outside agent, a person that's involved in the process and walks away scot-free. We know that Gavin Newsom is supportive of assisted suicide and killing vulnerable patients with medicine. But the reason we know it is that he freely did so before it was even legal. He engaged in the assisted suicide killing of his mother. And like many assisted suicide cases, this was written of and it's been spoken of, and you can look it up. But he admits he did not get along with his mother. He did not want to see his mother. And in particular, when she was sick, he wouldn't go visit her. He was alienated from his mother. But when he got the call, I want to kill myself, why don't you come on down? He was there. And he engaged in an illegal act. It was not yet legal. So this man believes that killing vulnerable human beings should be part of our society. And that's very much what we talk about in the Right to Life cause. So we thought it was important to highlight this and who he is. Now, there's many more factors to politics. And people were disappointed, oh, we lost the recall. But in point of fact, this recall was hugely significant. It had virtually no chance of succeeding from the get-go. Getting the signatures, that was miraculous. Many of you know that it was only late in the game that Larry Elder, a popular radio host on the Salem network, Larry Elder decided to jump in. Had he not, most of those folks were relatively unknown. Now, what happened is that a machine political entity swung into action. The Democrat Party swung into action. We're going to talk about the modern Democrat Party here in California and nationwide when we come back. But you need to realize the fact that this recall election is behind us and that we didn't win, that is not a reason to be discouraged. In fact, the fact that it even happened is a reason to be encouraged because we are now facing a political war. We've always been facing it. Many haven't realized it. But 2022 is on us right now. And it's the first shot, you might say, in the elections of 2022. And there's a lot of people that have had enough. We've had enough of the intellectual dishonesty, the moral turpitude, and the intentional killing that has come out of the Democrat Party. And now we have a chance to begin that battle. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's ahead for 2022 and why the recall election gave us an advantage, even though we lost. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Life Matters continues after this.
Are you willing to step up to be a lifeguard? We're asking you to consider becoming a Life Matters lifeguard. On Life Matters, we cut to the depths of this cultural battle of ideas that has robbed America of its core values and robbed the innocent of their right to life. Anything you can pledge is appreciated. But if you pledge $19 a month, we will make you part of the Life Matters Lifeguard team, getting you the important tools and dynamic information to help save lives and encourage others in understanding the lurking dangers in today's deadly cross currents of culture. Your pledge helps us with our costs of broadcast. It keeps the full understanding of the right to life going out over our numerous radio stations, and also facilitates the important podcast that carries even more programming. Please go to the front page of the Life Matters website and click on the donate button. Your donation is deeply appreciated.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back. As we said, we're talking about the recall election. We're going into a post-operation analysis to talk about it. The fact is that this was an extraordinary election, the fact that it even took place. We talked about the qualifying for the ballot, how difficult that is, and yet it did happen, and it was extraordinary. But then it was the governor himself and his close ally, the Secretary of State, that could control how the election would take place. And quite callously, they limited the window for the election. They intentionally made sure it was not at normal election time. They, in fact, made the window very, very narrow, just a matter of weeks, in order to build up for this recall election. So that was a tough mountain to climb. And we know that in the ballots that were cast, what happened, the Democrat Party did something extraordinary. They did not want Democrats to consider any alternatives. They gave an order from on high. You're to obey and follow Gavin Newsom's ideology. Now, there's quite a few Democrats that don't agree with Gavin Newsom on a lot of issues. And I could go through some of them. But we know on the life issue, there are pro-life Democrats. But there's a lot of Democrats that don't like the mask mandates, that don't like the way he's dealt with businesses, that don't like the way he's dealt with wildfires, that don't like the ideology that he pushes at every turn. And yet, these Democrats were instructed, and the Democrat machinery were instructed to not support any alternative. So we had a situation as we're counting the ballots now, but of the 9.3 million ballots that have been counted so far, 4.1 million are 44.5%, did not include a choice for a replacement candidate. In other words, these people simply voted no to the recall. They didn't vote for the alternatives. There were several Democrat alternatives. I know, I met with them. They're very interesting people. But the Democrat Party voted as a political bloc. And this is where I have to tell you about history and the corruption we have seen in political history. And in particular, the machinery of politics. This is very much similar to what I would consider the evil political machine known as Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall, if those of you who remember your history, controlled New York politics from the 1790s. That's right, the 1790s. Aaron Burr was part of the Tammany Hall machine in the 1790s. And it was only after he killed Hamilton that he actually faded. But the Tammany Hall machine notoriously took advantage of immigrants. Now, many of you know that I'm an Irish immigrant. My folks came to the United States after World War II, though. So I'm relatively recent. I was the first in my family born here. My older siblings were born in Ireland. But the Irish have been coming to America for a long time, particularly during the famine, the famous Irish famine, and to New York. So if you saw the movie Gangs of New York, you saw the influence of the Irish. And you also saw the political machinery of Tammany Hall, a vicious political machine. They forced votes out of people. You gave them your ballots. And that's what's happening in California now. Literally, if you are a member of a government employees union, and they're very big and very powerful because it's your tax money. Government employees unions are instructed to vote Democrat. They are the single greatest donors to the Democrat Party. Democratic is a misnomer because they're not democratic. It's called Democrat, and they're a political machine that lives off the state. They believe in the centralized power of the state, and these unions instruct their employees to vote as a bloc, and they're not allowed to sway or in any way divert from who you're told to vote for. It's thug politics. And again, I remind you, this happened in American history. Look up Tammany Hall. The Tammany Hall machine literally existed, again, from the 1790s through into the 1960s. It was only in the 1960s that Tammany Hall's strength began to come to an end. And it took a lot. The way it came to an end is people said, we've had enough. So you have to recognize that. Those of you who remember American history, the name Fiorello LaGuardia, he is famous because he was one of the first governors of New York to break the back of Tammany Hall. But political corruption in the Democrat Party has been I'm not saying Republicans aren't bad, but they're incomparable if you look at political machines. And I wish I was joking. I wish this was metaphor. But if you look at the machinery of the Democrat Party, you find it. This is how I explain to my kids. The Democrat Party is based on majority vote, that if you have the majority, you can control the government. The Republican Party has a different principle. The Republican Party believes that there are higher principles, that a republic, a constitutional republic, must adhere to the higher principles of that Constitution. Now, these are two very quick overviews, but you go ahead in history and look at that. The Democrat Party believes if you have more than 50%, you can control anything you want. You'll use that power for what you decide is best. Power is what determines what the law should be. In a Republican form of government, it is not power, but rather principles that have to be sought and adhered to. A very stark contrast in terms of political philosophy, and I would defy you to explain it differently because that is the basic principle we're looking at. A form of government based on vox populi, vox dei, that whatever the people want, that's what we should do. Or a government built on a republic that is based in a constitutional principle that those principles should guide the republic. And those who are elected need to adhere and follow higher principles than the immediate clamor of the crowd. So very different political philosophies. And in California, we have been controlled as of late by one of the most strident Democrat Party machines. Again, controlled by government unions, the teachers' unions, extremely powerful. And we don't need to get into a lot of matters here, but we know the Democrat Party is controlled by those who embrace abortion as a way of life. You cannot have any position in Democrat leadership unless you embrace abortion on demand. So we have a great challenge right now. The fact that there was a recall, the fact that we did not wait until 2022 to raise issues about this Democrat form of leadership. Again, this death-loving Democrat form of leadership. The fact that the battle came sooner than later is of extraordinary consequence for you. This has been a practice run for 2022. And the reason I say that, the way we are going to win is the same way that Tammany Hall was defeated. People simply said, I've had enough. And again, in New York, they used the Irish population, just as the Democrat Party has used minorities. They use them. They tell them, if you believe in your minority, if you're Irish, you're going to vote Tammany. If you are black, you're going to vote Democrat. If you're Hispanic, you vote Democrat. That's how it is. And then if you stray or ask questions, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be excluded. You're going to be verbally abused. And in other ways, you're going to be punished socially. And the only way to resist that is to resist that. And that takes courage. But the facts are on our side. When it comes to this Democrat Party, it's inescapable the failures of this party, obviously on the issues of life, which is the reason we have government, to protect the lives of the governed. Not only in the issues of life, but in so many other ways, the Democrat Party has abused its role in government. So we now have a chance, and the way we're going to do it is in 2022, we have more opportunities than we've ever had before. A lot of people have left California, again, thanks to Governor Newsom and his party. They have pushed people out of what was once a great state because of the lack of population. That drop of population is the first time in California history. California is losing a congressional seat. What that means for 2022 is there's going to be new district maps with redistricting. We had 53, now we're going to have 52 members of Congress. All of those borders are going to change. But it isn't just those maps. Every Senate and Assembly district in the state is going to have new borders. But there's more. With the redistricting, the precincts change even on the local level, on the county level. These are challenges to people who are incumbents. They're going to have to realize that they'll have new voters they're going to have to explain their ideas to. If you're involved in the political process, you are involved in a battle, as I said. This is the battle of ideas. And you have to be willing to take that chance, just as Churchill said, yeah, you might die. You might die 1,000 deaths, but at least it's not a real war. And Churchill gladly went into battle. Reagan gladly, he was called the happy warrior. We have to give a shot at changing policy. And the way you do that is by talking about it, explaining the issues, and motivating people to make a difference right where they are. And that's what's coming up now in 2022. We'll be right back after this.
Life Matters continues after this.
This is Brian Johnston of the California Pro-Life Council. Wherever medicine has been used to kill, it's proved impossible to control. Please help us stop assisted suicide in California. Go to stopassistedsuicide.com. That's stopassistedsuicide.com.
Did you know that California has a law in the books that says you need to protect babies born alive in the course of an abortion? But that law is simply ignored. We need to shine a light on this cover-up of the abortion industry in our state. Go to californiaprolife.org and click on the Light of Day project. We need the facts about late-term abortion to be examined and made known. We need the government doing its job to protect lives. We need the light of day on this.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
We're back, and you're listening to Life Matters. I said this throughout the recall. This is a dry run. It's practice. It's the waves of cultural conflict. You can ride the surf. Surfers love storms because there's waves. And as you learn to ride these waves, you can be a better and better surfer. You can deal with conflict in a much better way. And we are seeing people stepping up to run for school board, to run for city council, to run for Congress. We're seeing new faces of people who have had enough. We've had enough of Tammany Hall. We had enough of the Aaron Burrs. Again, if you know your American history, Aaron Burr was an unconscionable climber. He was a political climber that used government for his own purposes. And I hate to say this, but that's really what the Democrat Party has become. A gathering of people who are using this position for other purposes, the principles of the Constitution, the higher laws that are supposed to guide us when we make law, that's been dismissed. And so we need people to be involved, and that could be you. If not, there are friends and neighbors of yours. They're going to be running in 2022. You're going to want to help them. So this whole process, yes, ballots are still being counted, but when all is said and done by October 15th, it doesn't look like we're going to make it. That's okay. But the fact is that people have gotten involved in the process. We've demonstrated that the weakness of this governor is really the weakness of the Democrat Party, this new Tammany Hall machine, this political machine that's not committed to principles, it's committed to power. It's committed to superimposing its power on others, using minorities, using people, taking their money and directing it where they want. If you get involved, you're going to find it's not that hard. We know on the city council level, we know on the school board level, children are being taught terrible ideas. Planned Parenthood wants into each and every school district in this state. If you recall, in the year 2019, Planned Parenthood got 50 school-based clinics in Los Angeles County. The way they got them is that people on the school board didn't ask the right questions. They were given a part of the school where it was considered a private clinic. The school officials are not allowed to know or even go into that classroom, it's usually a classroom, or a section of the school, even though they have both fiscal and fiduciary responsibilities. They're not allowed to know what goes on in those, quote, sex clinics. I'm not kidding. Look it up. In the name of privacy, those third-party people, these are people, employees of Planned Parenthood, talk about children's sex lives with them, hand out literature, and can hand out devices, hand out medicine, quote unquote, that can have an evil impact. Parents need not know about it. And teachers, they're not allowed to know about it. These are done specifically to get around parents. And yet that's now allowed in these schools. And it's our tax money paying for it. If there was one member of that school board that would ask the question, wait a second, you're saying you're offering health clinics, but what's going to go on? Can we monitor what goes on there? No, you can't. If that had been asked, eyebrows would have raised. Who will be accountable? There's no accountability. If the principal goes in and asks questions in that classroom, it's against the law because it's interfering with the privacy. They are giving that portion of the school to Planned Parenthood to do what they want. If just one member of that school board had said, well, this isn't really a gift we're interested in, it would have come to an end. We need people who are willing to ask the right questions at the right time. In the Democrat Party, particularly in California, controlled by pro-abortion interests, pro-union interests that have no conscience about the value of human life, the only way we can win is to fight. What the recall did is it invited us into the battle ahead of time to prepare. And I want to remind you, in 2022, there's battles locally at your city council, at your school board. Congress we're going to have new districts for Congress. There's great hope. We only need to take a handful of congressional seats to be rid of Nancy Pelosi. So this is an important thing. Why is it important to battle? Look, I'm sure when Paul Revere's ride about the British coming, some may ask, why do I have to go to Concord? Why do I have to go and fight this? It's because of ideas. Ideas were at stake. Policies were at stake. And so they went and gathered and fought. And that shot heard around the world, the shot at Concord Bridge, changed everything. You have to be willing to be involved in the battle of ideas. You have to be willing to see that policies matter. The reason babies are dying is because of the policies of government. Someday soon, we're going to see Roe v. Wade overturned. I believe sooner than later. But if you're not prepared to protect children in California, it means nothing. You have to be willing to fight for the policies of California. So we've been practicing now through this recall. We actually did, I think, fairly well. And I think it's inspired a lot of people to care. It's also thrown back the curtain on the Tammany Hall, the corrupt power of our current California Democrat Party, the pro-death Democrat Party of California. You're going to hear a lot more in the months ahead about what you can do to change your community, to change your state for life, because life matters.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.